Let's welcome in now Pennsylvania Congressman Guy Reschenthaler to talk more about this. We always call him Guy. You don't have to remind me this time, Guy. We'll just go with Guy as your request. You're a member of the House Judiciary and Foreign Affairs Committees. But I want to talk about that letter in just a second. But first, let's start with one of your Democratic colleagues. Tim Ryan had quite an emotional outburst yesterday on the House floor. Here he is.
Holy cow. Incoherence. No idea what you're talking about. Benghazi, you guys chased the former Secretary of State all over the country, spent millions of dollars. We have people scaling the Capitol, hitting the Capitol Police with lead pipes across the head, and we can't get bipartisanship. If we're going to rebuild the country, if we're going to reverse climate change, we need two political parties in this country that are both living in reality, and you ain't one of them.
Now, Guy, it's interesting he mentioned climate change and the whole Green New Deal and talking about reality at the same time. Look, I understand his frustration. I kind of empathize with him when it comes to the Benghazi investigation because we never got any real answers as to what happened there. But he kind of also makes the point why we don't need this 1/6 commission. It is just going to be another partisan exercise. Again, I appreciate his emotion here, but save us the drama.
Well, I'll explain that emotion because let me cut through that BS that you just saw displayed. Tim Ryan is he's perceived as far too conservative for the radical base of his party. He's got big aspirations to run for governor, Senate. He ran for president, and he's terrified that he's viewed as too moderate for his base. So you see him feigning that emotion or getting emotional. Let's call that what it is. That's absolute political theater. And that's nothing but appeasement to the far radical base. I see through that, and so should other people. Now, when it comes to this 1/6 commission, I'll tell you what this commission is not going to be, John. It's not going to be fair and impartial. It's not going to seek any truth. What it's going to be used for is a political tool to make Republicans look bad, to badger former President Trump, and to have this hanging over the head of every Republican as we head into the midterm elections in 22. Additionally, we don't need this, and I'll tell you why. It's dead on arrival in the Senate. We know that. Further, we've already voted to appropriate $10 million to look at the security issues around the Capitol and strengthen the security parameter around the Capitol and other security provisions. $10 million. That's already been appropriated. We also have the 9/11 Commission. Remember, 9/11 happened when I was a freshman in college. It was a long time ago. It pains me to say that. But we've had this 9/11 Commission sitting around, which had findings that the security around the Capitol was totally inadequate. And a lot of those provisions in that 9/11 Commission have not been codified, have not been acted on. So why don't we start by looking at what the 9/11 Commission said, taking the allocated appropriated money and bolstering security. We don't need this political tool. We don't need to empower Nancy Pelosi to have a weapon to use in the 22 midterm elections.
I think the other thing that undercuts the Democrats and Tim Ryan's argument is what we saw during the impeachment proceedings, which so many times, not just the first impeachment, but also the second impeachment, so many members of the Democratic Party held up stories from the Washington Post and the New York Times and used them as evidence in an impeachment trial. That would never happen in a court of law. And now we saw, I think, another preview of what would happen with a 1/6 commission with that letter from the Capitol Police yesterday. You know, that was debunked. The Capitol Police had to put out a tweet after the fact saying, no, in fact, the Capitol Police does not weigh in on pending legislation before Congress. A lot of people are pointing this back at Jamie Raskin, who circulated this. It turns out there's just one officer and a lot of anonymous people that never really materialized. What do you know about this letter and Jamie Raskin's involvement with it?
Well, I know this. If the mainstream media was doing their job, they would have Jamie Raskin between a rock and a hard place. And here's why. Either one of two things happened with that letter. Number one, we know it was debunked, right? So either someone fed it to Jamie Raskin knowing that he would bite on this, and he did. He fell hook, line, and sinker for this fraud and then sent it around. Number one, so he's incompetent. Or two, what is worse is that one of his staffers fabricated this letter, and then he tried to get police officers to sign on to it, and he spearheaded it, which makes him look disingenuous. So either it's incompetence or something nefarious happened. Either way, it does not look good for Jamie Raskin. Unfortunately, the mainstream media will not call him out, but thankfully you will. So that's that letter, and it just shows they're politicizing this even more. That letter, this commission would just produce more of that, more of what you're seeing in that letter, which is just division and where they're trying to make Republicans look bad.
Well, I've never worked at the New York Times or the Washington Post, guy, so forgive me if I'm not a journalist expert here. But I do know normally when you get a letter like this that you would call somebody at Capitol Police to verify its veracity. Apparently that never happened. This was also, I think, on the lead story of the CBS Evening News last night. But we'll leave that aside. Because, you know,
I wasn't calling you out, John.
No, I know.
And to make this even richer, Jamie Raskin is a law professor. So when you're talking about veracity and authenticating documents, it's amazing because he can lecture Republicans and Republican supporters on the law, but at the end, he doesn't even understand how to authenticate a letter. But excuse me, I just needed to get that in.
I appreciate that. Real quickly, you know, we heard from Rochelle Walensky. I only got 10 seconds real quickly, but this is a pretty shocking admission from her yesterday that this, in fact, may have been a lab leak, ostensibly from Wuhan. I think this puts even more pressure on Dr. Fauci to answer some of these questions about, you know, the funding of the Wuhan Institute of Virology.
Right. No rational person can look at the evidence that's surrounding this lab leak and what happened in Wuhan and not think it was a lab leak. I said this about a year ago. I was very vocal. So is Tom Cotton. We were called conspiracy theorists. We were called other names. Clearly, we were onto something. And that the U.S. aid wrote me a letter admitting that they sent $1.1 million to EcoHealth Alliance, which then sent the money to the Wuhan Institute of Virology to study biological weapons of mass destruction. It doesn't take a genius to connect these dots. I wish more Democrats would call out China, hold China accountable, and make sure that these leaks never happen again.
Yeah, that's an investigation I think the American public might support. We already had the impeachment. You know, time to look into what happened with this leak. Guy, great to see you. Thanks so much.